Hey, this is my engine Sprint 9. So for this week, I spent my time cleaning up documentation, commenting some classes that didn't have anything, and adding more examples to help the user out. So besides having the basic examples for different functions, in my start page, I added some info on how to set up a scene. So what they would need to do to go about setting up a start scene and then initializing it, and then how to set up that scene with objects and collision. And then a little part for the default keys so that they don't have to go searching the code to see what the default keys are for shaders. And then they're all listed here. And then for my actual sprint this week, I have my image manager handled just like my other resource managers, like models and shaders and such. So I have a map of a string for a key and an image pointer. And then I can load an image or get an image. And then, of course, when I load it in, I pass in the key, but also the texture that I'm using, and then the rectangle for that subsection of the image. And then getImage just returns the image and the list if it exists, or the map. And then unload just deletes all of them at the end. So if I go to my load resources, I'm using the stitch texture. So the texture is loaded in here, stitch text, and then I call image manager create image. So I give it the key, the texture, and then the rectangle with the width and height of the full image. So that's loaded it under the key stitch. And then if I go to my sprite, this is my new sprite class, where I can change all these variables, but then also manipulate the position, rotation, and scale. So when I initialize it, I initialize with the model for the sprites, the shader, so it's the default sprite render, and then the image I just call get key. So all the user has to do is pass in the name that they gave. They don't have to get it from the image manager because it handles it here. And then I create a new graphics object with those parameters. And then by default, it's the entire image at the position of the image. And then scale is going to be 1 by default, rotation 0, and then translation, the original position of the image. Center by default is 0, 0. And then I construct the world matrix and then set the world. For setting the center, all I do is change the variables. For setting position, I change the translation matrix and then reconstruct the world matrix, as well as setting them as local variables so that the user can access them if they need to. Setting the angle, I set the local variable. I change the rotation matrix to be the rotation of the angle. And then since I have to rotate around whatever is defined as the origin, I have to rotate by multiplying the inverse of the translation matrix times that rotation, and then translating it back to the position that it was before. And then once I have that entire thing, I can reconstruct the world matrix, and then set the world for the sprite object. GetAngle just returns the angle, getPosition returns the position as a vector. Scale factor is just setting the scale matrix and then reconstructing it again, and then setting it, and then set scale pixel. Since I'm given a pixel value of an image, all I have to do is take that value, divide it by the width and height of the actual image, which gets me my scale factor, and then I can just pass that in by calling set scale factor with the new scale factor, and then it just rescales it by reconstructing the matrix. And then render, of course, just gets the scene's current 2D camera, so all the user has to do is call render. They don't have to specify camera, and then it'll render in the right spot. If I go to my frigate, this is where I put my stitch sprite, so p stitch sprite equals new sprite, and then pass in the key, which is just stitch. My scale factor is 0.5.5, set center is 0 by default, and it's going to be in the middle of the screen. And then the angle is 0 by default. So I'll run this, and then you'll see that it's in the middle of the screen, and it's above all the other objects because I'm calling draw2d, which is a new function for my drawables, and that gets called after draw. So I'll just let this load really quick. And then I'll also show how rotation works, and movement still works along with it. So here's stitch, appearing over everything, the visualizer stuff, and the terrain. I can rotate by pressing E, and then I can press Q, and it'll move. And then when I rotate again, it'll still be rotating about the origin. I can still move and rotate. If I want to change, I'll change multiple things to show that they're working. So I'll change the scale to 2.5. And then I'll change the angle to This is in radians, I believe. I'll just do 0.5. So now it's 2.5 times larger, and it's rotated by that amount. If I undo that, and I want to set a specific value, so I want to do 500 by 500, I'll do that instead. I'll run this here. And then it should be scaled exactly to 500 by 500. There you go. Comment that out really quick. If I want to change the center so it doesn't rotate around its own center, if I change this to like 50, 50, you'll see it'll rotate around that local point. So now if I rotate, it rotates about here, around the ear. And then even if I rotate that way, I can still move relatively normally, and then rotate again by that point. And there you go. If I want to make this more dramatic, rotate around 150. And the position changing and everything still works fine. So now it's a more dramatic origin change, but I can move just fine regardless of what position I'm at. So there you go. And then that's all I had to do to get this right working. Fairly simple, but that's all I have for this week. So thank you.